Greetings one and all, this is vk3sl. Welcome to the evening session. We are doing more missions and on board for a late night program. Not terribly late, but we'll go with the flow and play a few things this evening. So, hope all is well. Now, we've got our channel open there for Mr. Frank when he's ready, and we'll see what we can find. I'm going to play a few more items from the APV collection. Mr. Ian, Mr. APV, he kindly dropped off some 78s a few weeks ago now, and we've been indulging. It's been a fabulous treat. And these are all classical offerings from his father's collection. So we'll play a few of those. And hi there, Frank.
Steve, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah.
Just finishing off listening to Clint.
Yes, of course. No, do that. And look, just chime in whenever you're ready. Do you want to
just call back in 1 minute?
Yeah, look, you do that. You do sort of say hi to Clint and do his call back, and then come back when you're ready. It's all fine. So yeah, that. I haven't had a chance to listen to Clint for a while, but I'm sure it's. I'm sure he's full of interest with his ASV offerings. Yeah, all right. So to kick off, we'll hear a recording of Schubert's March Militaire. This is a recording with Hamilton Harty, and I think it's the London Phil on the Columbia 78. So let's kick in. We have to get this right, because we have to turn off our monitoring if we're going to make this work. We'll do a retake on this because we can't have double missions. So here we go. We'll start again. We'll get to the beginning of the record. Here we go. In the groove. there we have it, the March Militaire by Schubert, played by one of the London orchestras. I'll find out. I'll peel the shellac disc off the turntable and all will be revealed. Yes, it's the London Philharmonic Orchestra. And we heard Hamilton Harty, who had a long tenure with the Halle Orchestra, sort of associated with the Halle Orchestra, but in this instance he's with the London Phil.
It's very nostalgic for me. I grew up with that in early days of musical appreciation.
Oh, did you really? Oh, fabulous. That's great.
Always struck me that a bit kind of ironic that Schubert never struck me as being a military sort of a person.
No, that's so true. His music is sort of quaint and very sort of intimate, and it doesn't sort of register, does it? In relation to his songs and his chamber music, and I don't see him as sort of a bombastic orchestral
How he came to
composer.
write it.
I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out. I wonder if there is information. Maybe we can find out. March Militaire by Schubert. I haven't got my tablet. I've only got my phone today. March Militaire by Schubert. We'll find out the context for this work. 3 Marches Militaires by Franz Schubert. Okay, he wrote 2 others. All right. I'm not aware of them. And 3 marches. Here they go. Let's find out what it has to say. Originally written for 4 hands. Okay, so piano. Background. It's not certain when the Marches Militaire were written. Many scholars favour 1818, but some prefer alternative dates such as 1822 or 1824. It is known that they were written during Schubert's stay at Count Johann Karl Esterhazy's summer home in Hungary. How about that? Now in Slovakia. Okay, he'd accepted a job there as a music teacher to the court's daughters. Right. And were published in Vienna in 1826. There we have it, all in ternary form. Yeah, okay. Well, that would be one of the first recordings of them, I think. But I've only got the one here. But yeah, just playing a few more items from Ian's collection, Mr. APV. Who's, we've sort of got all these records in our midst at the moment and enjoying them thoroughly. We've had a number of programs dedicated to them, and we'll play a few. On the other table, I've got the opening movement of Mozart's Jupiter Symphony, and I think it's Bruno Walter and the Vienna Phil. So maybe we'll hear a bit of Mozart. I can't recall if I played this or not sure, but there's some other Mozart here which I definitely haven't played, so we'll follow on with that shortly. But yeah, let's have a listen to the Jupiter Symphony. It's great music and classic Mozart, late Mozart, written in the last years of his life. I'm vk3sl. There you go, the first movement from Mozart's Final Symphony, one of his greatest works. Work that was held in the highest... Oh, sorry, Frank, I'll get you out of the thing there. You with us there?
Yes.
Sorry.
I'm just about to talk to Clint.
Yes, do that.
I'll be back in a second.
Yes, take your time, please. No worries at all. So we just heard the first movement. What can I tell you about it? Oh, it was amazing. It was sort of what is the last of his symphonies, one of three. He wrote them as a sort of symphonic cycle. And it's one of the most influential works of its time, really of all time. It's sort of galvanized the symphonic form. And why was it called the Jupiter? Because of bolts of lightning. That was the association with some of its big impact moments. But it's sort of known for its big fugue in the last movement, which we can come back to. Yeah, anyhow, there we have a historic recording of Bruno Walter there. And the Vienna Phil, back in the day. Well, another recording from Mr. APV's collection is the choir of the Strasbourg Cathedral. And we have here the Ave Verum from the... what's the work from? It's by Mozart, but I just don't know exactly what it comes from. It's a part of something, I think, or is it a standalone piece? I'm not sure, but it's a piece known to many. Everyone will recognise this. It's famous, and I'm keen to hear this version. So here we go. A Columbia 78 queued up, ready to go. I'm vk3sl with the right turntable. work written just 6 months before Mozart's passing. And a delightful recording for slow tempo and big forces. I always like to hear that type of interpretation. Yeah, it's delightful to hear. It's a motet, and 1791. He wrote it in the middle of writing the Magic Flute.
Yeah.
He sort of took some time out.
The output in his last year was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the quality of the music was, I thought, the best he ever wrote.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and his late symphonies are all marvellous. It's incredible, really. What he's
matured so much from Symphony 39.
Yeah, it's so true. Definitely. Yeah, it's gorgeous, isn't it? Well, I love that. Love the tempo. Oh, Kate just came in then. She was listening to it with me. We're just savouring the tempo there in the choir of Strasbourg Cathedral.
Beautiful.
Yeah. What's the other side?
Now, Clint would be listening by now. So
okay.
We say evening to Clint.
We do indeed. Hi there, Clint. Hope you're well. It's been a long time between drinks. Haven't spoken to you for ages, so I'll have to catch up.
We've had a very interesting broadcast tonight,
okay.
as usual.
Yeah.
Plenty of listeners.
Yeah.
Plenty of callers in.
Did he mention the blood moon tonight?
I didn't hear it mentioned. You may have. Someone might have. I had to miss parts of it. I was distracted.
Yeah, sure. No worries. That's fine. Yeah, I've got to sort of get back into my routine. I used to listen to it religiously, and now I've there's a lot of things getting in the way with family and such, and I haven't heard it for a little while. But, We'll hear another motet for mixed choir and organ. This is K327. It's the other side of that record. We might as well hear the other side. Well, we don't play a lot of choral music on the program, and this is Doramus Te Christi. So a little bit more Mozart to grace the program. And these records are all from Ian's, Mr. APV's father's collection, which we've been really enjoying late. So another wonderful Mozart offering. What a beautiful composition. Yeah, interesting. I've just established that this work is probably not by Mozart. It was considered a work of Mozart's until 1922. Then it was ascertained to be a work in Leopold Mozart's hand of a work by Gasparini. There we go. So it's actually got another life. Always fascinating to hear these sort of stories where the researchers can find out, do their deep research into the authenticity of works. But how about that? It stands alone. It doesn't really matter who wrote it. It just sounds marvellous. So that was a bit special. Hearing that was the other side. Does there anything else here? Does it actually credit Mozart? Yes, it does. Yes, it's an arrangement, but Mozart is credited on the label of this disc, but perhaps not by Mozart. Okay, all right. Well, let's. Are you there, Frank? We might have missed you for a minute there. Maybe he's busy. Yeah, we'll continue. We'll continue on with the flow. What else do we have here in the pile?
I'm sorry, I got called away.
No worries at all. That's all fine. I was just saying that that work we just heard, the Adoramus Te Christi, the work we just heard, is actually attributed to Gasparini, not Mozart. It's been sort of debunked. So it's one of those work that was thought to be by Mozart, but not the case.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, how these things can be sort of established. But, yeah, I'm not sure of the full circumstance of its new claim to authenticity, but, yeah, evidently so. Beautiful nonetheless. Yeah, it doesn't matter who wrote it. All right.
Great selection tonight.
No, it's all good. Thanks, Ian. Yeah. No.
I've also included some sheet music.
Yeah, there's quite a bit. There's still sitting in the music room.
Waiting to be processed.
Yeah. I think there'll be a few songs there that we've got a few singers in the family, so I think some of the arias will get a Guernsey over time. So yeah, that'll all be absorbed into the library. So that's all good. Yeah. Now we have another work from Sir Hamilton Harty, who was, I think he was Irish-born, Sir Hamilton Harty, and we sort of associate him with the Halle Orchestra. He had a long encumbrancy with the Halle Orchestra, but in this instance with the London Symph, and it's a work by Weinberger called Schwander, the bagpipe player. It's a polka and fugue.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, it's good fun. So we'll play this as two sides of a 12-inch record. So we'll give it the flip-o-matic halfway through. So bear with us with a moment of dead air where we.
Do you know the background to this at all?
I don't look. There probably is. I'll just have a quick read about it while we're listening and see if we can fill the gap. But I've heard it before. It's It's one of those sort of works that's always been out there, and I just don't know its full picture. I think it was Weinberger was a late 19th century composer.
Seems to get played a bit on the radio.
Yeah, sure. All right, we'll continue that tradition. Let's have a listen. Well, there we have it, the Fugue and Polka from Schwander the Bagpiper. And that actually was an opera, a two-act opera with 5 scenes written by Jaromir Weinberger. He's a Czech composer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote that for the Czech National Opera, performed first in 1927. And I think there are over 2,000 performances all over the place until, sadly, the work was banned by the Nazis and as withdrawn. And but he actually escaped, and he moved to America, and I think he had a fairly long life. Let's check his dates. Yeah, 1967 he lived to 1890s to 1967, and and this work was I think sort of now known just for those movements, but it was an actual opera, and a very successful one at that. But I've heard that. Yes, I've definitely recognised it, hearing it on the ABC.
Yeah. They used to play. It was sort of short things that they could play.
Yes, a little sort of potpourri, a little vignette. But
like classic.
Yeah, definitely. But no, really well written and very characterful. And
like a little fugue.
Yeah, it's great. It was really well written. So yes, the music of Weinberger. It's probably mainly the work that defines him somewhat, but at least it sort of survives in the in the canon. A lot of recordings of it, but it's a remarkable fact that it had 2,000 performances. Amazing, including at the Met. There we go. So that's a bit special, and that particular version with Sir Hamilton Harty conducting the London Symphony Orchestra, and you could hear the organ in that as well.
A bit faster than you sometimes hear it.
Yes, sometimes it is played in quite a stately way.
It is. That was just as good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's great. All right, well, continuing sifting through the pile, I'm sort of playing little excerpts here. We have recording of the one of Brahms' sonatas, one of my favourites actually, the D minor, number 3. Marvellous work. I'll play the fourth movement it is actually. It's a presto agitato. And this is a recording with Isaac Stern and Alexander Zakin. So this would have to be it would be a very young Isaac Stern. I'd say it would actually almost be in the 50s, late 40s perhaps. And
he came out to Australia, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he did. Yes.
He did. I remember hearing in the 50s there was an amateur. This is quite interesting. There was an amateur called Peter Lempriere.
Oh, yeah.
vk3sl was his call sign. He worked for the Wall Board or something. He lived in Toorak.
Yes.
And he had 100 watts to a folded dipole.
Oh, did he really?
and a pretty Tooraki sort of funny voice.
Yes.
And he said one day on the radio that he was going to meet Isaac Stern at the airport.
Oh, my goodness me.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So was it a formal arrangement? Did he know him?
He didn't give any more details. He just announced that he was going to do that.
Wow.
And, that he was looking forward to meeting him, and he was a great musician.
Okay.
And that was really the end of it. But it stuck in my mind.
Yeah.
This would have been 1954 or 5.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that'd be the time of this, I'd say. Well, this might be a little bit earlier, but that's very interesting. And I know he came out to Australia because Kate's great aunt, who played with the Adelaide Symphony, evidently got to meet him because she had a copy of his violin.
Oh.
Yeah, so his instrument was copied by A.E. Smith, who was an Australian violin maker of note. And he copied Isaac Stern's fiddle, and I think a few people had copies of it. And just in terms of dimensions, I think it was a Strat or something that Stern played, but his instrument was copied.
Yeah.
And I know that Rita had a Smith copy of Stern's violin. I read her notes after she died. We went through her papers, and that was an interesting point. Actually, the instrument, the family found it under her bed because she hadn't played for a while, and she had a tragic ending, actually. She'd fallen over and was on the floor for long days. It was really sad. And she hadn't played for a while, and they found this violin, and they said, "Oh, this is violin. under the bed with the name Smith, and my jaw hit the floor. I said, Smith, you've got to get it valued. And they thought it was, the extended family thought it was just a cheap and nasty fiddle, but it was worth a lot of money.
Oh, boy.
And, many tens of thousands. And I think about 60,000 in the end.
Oh, God, what happened?
Yeah, so it was sold. I was actually I helped the process of getting it, finding a good buyer for it. A top fiddle player, someone with one of the our big orchestras.
Yes.
And so the instrument's now being used, and it's a wonderful outcome.
What a great story.
Yeah, so that's a copy of Isaac Stern's fiddle. So that Rita used to play. She was a great eccentric, Rita. I remember her very well. She was one of these people who lived at the ABC, but she never married, and she was in the Adelaide Symphony from the 30s, I think, right through till I think she was still playing it when I first met her, or she just retired. And but no one ever went inside her flat. And she lived in a squalor. None of the lights worked, the taps didn't work, nothing worked, and she never cleaned. And she just slept on top of the bed. But she was an immaculate woman. And what she'd do is she'd eat out every night, and all the meals are eating out, and she'd get all her clothes dry cleaned, and she'd just live at the ABC and just come home and lie in the bed and leave it first thing in the morning, and did that for decades. And
isn't that intriguing?
It's really interesting. So when they came, no one ever saw her flat. So after tragically, she died. She collapsed, and no one. I think it was the person who she bought her meals from who alerted the authorities. And then they found that when they saw her flat, it was just a terrible shock because it just hadn't been touched for decades. She just had done no. She had no sense of house. She wasn't house proud, or just had no interest in preserving just looking after the place. And just a small flat, but nothing, even the boxes when she'd first moved in. She lived with her parents until they died. Then she moved into this flat and she never even unpacked anything.
Good heavens.
And just slept on the bed in rags. And then but was an immaculate woman and had this great career, a long career, but she lived at the ABC. And I think there are people like that. And she just practiced all day and performed with them. That's what she did. And she had this gorgeous violin.
Oh, that is incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's the worry with people who are reclusive. That they die and you don't know it for ages.
Yeah. Apparently the plumbing didn't work. None of the lights worked. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's an amazing story. But I really like Rita. She was a true eccentric. Someone who's just absolutely focused on her music. That was everything, and to the exclusion of everything else, really. But yeah, why not?
Why not?
So we'll hear Isaac Stern.
That's the watch cry of the eccentric. Why not?
Yeah, totally.
Work that out.
Yes, I think you're right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to attempt to knit the two sides together with this one. So because this is a displaced set, sometimes you get sets of records where you get the sides on uneven. You get the sides are not on back to front, they're on different discs, so you could actually cue them up, and if you had two gramophones, as some people did, you could sort of keep it all moving.
Yeah.
So we'll attempt to do that on two turntables. So we'll just hear the last movement, the fourth movement from this gorgeous sonata. This is one of my very favourite Brahms sonatas. So it's got a bite out of it.
Oh no!
Oh no! All right, we'll still play it. But I'll have to do a bit of a fade in on side 6.
Yeah.
Never mind, it'll still work. So yeah, we'll have a listen to Miss Isaac Stern, who didn't die that long ago. He actually lived well into the 2000s, I think. He had a very distinguished career, fantastic fiddle player, but he would be a young man at this point in time. So let's get this queued up properly, got the right turntable switched in, and let's have some Brahms. My Drama, the music of Brahms, his famed third sonata in D minor. Yeah, great work, isn't it? I love Brahms's chamber music. It's full of wonderful sinewy textures and contrapuntal writing, and he was very much a
sort of excitement through it, isn't it?
Yes, he was really able to capture the drama through rhythmic interplay and concurrent themes. He was very much a linear composer. As opposed to the more vertical composers like Wagner and Liszt, which were more sort of vertically aligned in their textures. Brahms always wanted to, I think he came more from the tradition of J.S. Bach and others to embracing the counterpoint as a feature of the music. But, tremendously exciting work and interesting performance, one I'd never heard before. There's quite a bit of chamber music featuring the fiddle and piano in this collection, and I thought it'd be fun to play just the last part of the César Franck Sonata, recorded with Heifetz and Rubinstein. We played the first movement, I think, a couple of weeks back, but I'll just play the last part of the last movement, just the last section of it. And, have a listen to Jascha Heifetz, who was really at his peak around this time, mid-1930s. And I think he had a trio with Rubinstein, who we're about to hear as well, but also with Emanuel Feuermann. It was known as the $1 Million Trio because they also had such high acclaim. But, you'll hear two members of the $1 Million Trio here and playing the César Franck Sonata. So, such a great work. French music at its best from this period. And, a famed recording. we've just been electrocuted by Jascha Heifetz on the fiddle there, and Arthur Rubinstein on the piano. And that was the last movement, or part of the last movement, of the Sonata in A Major for violin and piano by César Franck. And yeah, it's considered to be one of the finest sonatas in its genre. And it says here, an amalgam of his rich native harmonic language with the classical traditions he valued highly, held together in a cyclic framework. Interesting, it's written for Isai, one of the most interesting violinists. It was written in 1886 for Eugene Isai, and presented to him at his wedding, and he sort of suspended, it seems the story here suggests that Isai suspended wedding preparations on the day so he could rehearse the work to play to the wedding guests.
Oh, good heavens. It's about leaving to the last minute.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great story, isn't it?
Terrific.
Yeah, there's some great stories about Isai. That's one. Another one I heard was that he'd pawned his trousers at a game of cards and he had no pants. And he was practicing, and the composer Vieuxtemps heard him from an upstairs room, and while walking past in the street, and somehow was able to remedy the situation and find him some
I've heard of
clothes.
losing your shirt and
Yes.
playing poker and
Yes,
takes it one stage further.
it does. So yeah, there's lots of stories. He's sort of well in the folklore. He was a larger-than-life character, Eugene Isai. He made a few records, and he wrote those marvelous solo violin sonatas, which I think are some of the greatest music written for solo violin. And we have featured them in the past, and they're very difficult, and they're not often performed, but amazing music. Yeah, well, maybe we'll have to feature them again, I reckon.
Very good. I should just say I'm vk3jr in contact with vk3sl crossband duplex 2 meters to 160 meters, and also maybe on frequency is if you're still there in vk3 radio TV.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Yes, Mr.
Good evening.
Mr. APV, thank you. Thank you for sharing your records. I'm going to move slightly to the side because there's one here that's been on the shelf for a long time, which I'd like to sample, and it just sort of jumped out when I was sorting earlier on, and it's a recording by Percy Grainger on an old Columbia. This is from the 20s. And he's performing Grieg's To Spring, and then after that, it's 2 tracks on this one side of a 12-inch record. It's quite an interesting disc. The other one's called One More Day, My John, a sailor's sea shanty, it says, by Granger himself, both performed by him in the 20s. I've got to hear this. This could be quite interesting. So I've always been an admirer of Granger's playing and his musical vision. He was a great. He had a very interesting mind.
Have you been to his museum?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, yeah. It's
I just laugh.
no, it's just astonishing. I mean, he was a very damaged man in many respects.
Well, he was. Do you know who used to be the curator of the museum?
Wasn't it? The name. I know.
I'm thinking of it too.
Yeah. Oh.
She
wrote the biography of him. Oh no. Wasn't it Kay Dreyfus?
Well done.
Yes.
Well done.
Yes.
And she wrote the book, of course, on the Kathy's relative.
Yes, of course. That's right. Yes. And it's no mistake that he made the museum look like a toilet block. And
all his underwear and stuff.
Yes, all in his toweling clothing. He wanted to feel free in his clothing.
In his whips.
Yes. Well, they were removed when I was at university because people involved were still around.
Yeah.
So,
I see.
So it was
necessary.
It was necessary to sort of remove them while those people were still.
Of course.
Yes. So, yes, I think they're back on show again. And I mean, look, tormented individual, he's writing as he sort of championed Northern European heritage.
Loved Grieg, didn't he?
Yeah, he loved Grieg's music.
Grieg thought he was a very good player too.
Yeah,
Grieg,
look,
I heard it. Maybe you played it.
Yeah.
Something that Grieg said.
Yes.
About Percy.
That's right.
That he liked to have him play his piano concerto.
Yeah, I think he thought that he was the champion of the piano concerto.
He said he had a very good, strong touch.
Yeah, he did, and he had a great architectural concept of the music. He also used to walk everywhere.
Yes. He was a physical training sort of, or physical fitness nut, as they say.
He was, and he used to walk between venues. So he'd often hike for 2 or 3 days to get to a venue.
Yeah.
And so he had this, and he actually stayed with my grandmother. Back in a long time ago, around the early days of the century, when she was very young. She said that it would be probably about 1912 or something. She said that he stayed with their family in Marupna.
Yeah.
So, and one of his walking tours, he'd sort of walk between he'd walk several hundred kilometres and camp and stay in hotels and just with a backpack, which is very remarkable.
He did. He had a remarkable life. Didn't he grow up in Camberwell or something?
Yes. His father designed the Princess Bridge.
He was an architect.
That's right. And but I don't think the marriage endured. And
no, I think the wife was very surprised. She got not quite what she was expecting.
Yes, and I think one of the complexities in Granger's life is the fact that his relationship with his mother was probably too close to be healthy. Anyhow, fascinating individual, remarkable pianist, and invented all manner of sort of new musics. He had these visions about contemporary music.
We've canvassed that a bit.
We have, we have, Frank. We have.
You.
We did. We were both in it together, and we sampled some of his free music, which is very interesting. And we used sort of free-form oscillators and found ways to sort of combine these mysterious layerings of sine waves and things, but he was sort of exploring continuous forms, and that was one of his ideas, his free music making machine. And the other thing he did of note was he collected folk songs on cylinder in England, in Europe, around the turn of the century, and was responsible for sort of preserving a lot of the heritage by getting people he had an Edison cylinder player, which he probably carried in his backpack, and went and recorded people folk music. And that collection's extensive, and some time ago Mr. L was very involved in transcribing them.
Is that so?
Yeah, for the Granger Museum.
Speak to him about
it's very interesting. I think a lot of them, unfortunately, had succumbed to mould. But the collection has been preserved as best as possible. So fascinating figure. Ended up moving to America in the 1930s and pretty much stayed in America.
Was that where he married? I think he married in America.
Did. He did. And then he periodically came back and played concerts here. I played an interview with him once. He lived until the early 1950s, and
long lived, wasn't he?
I played an interview. There's an interview with him, or there's a lecture by him, and which we have featured. But anyhow, this recording goes back to the 1920s. It's pretty early. I think it's an early electric, but yes. It's the music of Grieg and also his own Sailor's Sea Shanty. So we'll have a listen to this, and I'll just have to go through the motions here, queuing it up. Let's get the right turntable in sync. Yeah, here we go. There we go. That's a sailor's dance. Doesn't sort of sound like a sailor's dance. Beautiful composition, though. Full of...
I've never heard it before.
Yeah, delightful.
It reminded me a little bit of another piece about spring. I think it's called The Rustle of Spring.
Oh, yes, by Sindling.
By Sinding, isn't it?
Sinding, that's right, yes.
And it used to be played, they used to invariably play a recording of it by an Australian woman called Eileen Joyce.
Oh, yes, Tasmanian. Oh, that's
right.
that's a great piece. Oh, we should feature it. We'll play it later at the end of the program. I've just got a little rabbit hole here because since we did our Granger specials probably about 6 years ago now, 5 years ago, there's all manner of things have turned up.
Oh, really?
Yes, there's a couple of interviews with him. And
Perth.
yeah, so I reckon it'd be fun to listen. They're quite short. The extended one, which we played last time's there, that goes for an hour.
Yeah.
And but there's a number of others, and they're short and accessible. And here's one of them talking about Grieg, an interview by his biographer John Bird.
Yeah.
So I'll have to play this. This will be interesting.
Yes, please.
So 1957, he's pretty elderly here. It was not long before he died. So if he was born in the 1870s or early 1880s, he'd be a fair age by 1957.
He would.
So let's have a listen.
The joys and sorrows of other people. He was often talking, I think, consciously or otherwise, about his own joys and sorrows. Perhaps we all do this to some extent. But here is Granger in a 1957 BBC interview talking about the reasons for Grieg's bitterness in old age.
He was very disillusioned, and what shall one say, he was a very undignified man. This is a typical thing. We went up a hill where there was a restaurant up at the top, and Grieg was quite happy. And a German-American came over to speak to him and said in a drunken voice, "We're so proud of you, and we think of you always," and all that. And Grieg said to me, "There, that's it. If I get any praise from anybody, they're always drunk."
It was marvellous.
And then another morning, he'd be peering down at the earth, and he'd say, "No, I can't understand them. I can't understand the ants. I don't know what they're trying to do."
But why was he disillusioned, though? He had fame.
Because his three best works, the folk songs opus 66,
were only played
and
by
the
Percy
Lost in the Hills for baritone, two horns and strings, and the symphonic dances,
Yes.
and the album for male chorus opus 30. They were never done in his time in Norway.
What's that piece for two horns, did you say?
Lost in the Hills, literally taken by the hills. They believed that the hills opened up and closed on people. And it begins... That was done in Copenhagen when Grieg was a young man.
And Grieg really felt very bitter that these pieces weren't played.
He felt very bitter about everything.
Did he?
Well, I don't mean bitter in a bad sense, but he felt very pained about everything. But of course that's true of all Norwegian poetry. It's one long...
Moan.
The hero's moan, not a weakling's moan, but the sadness of a hero.
Now, you don't need a master's degree in psychology to see that Granger there was also talking about his own bitterness and disillusionment.
Well, here we go. Gosh, that's quite fascinating, isn't it? So,
Yes.
you're very insightful,
Sorry to hear that Grieg was disillusioned.
Yeah, it's rather sad.
Very fond of Grieg.
Yeah, likewise. I'll have to investigate those works he mentioned.
He married his cousin,
Oh, did he really?
first cousin. He did.
Okay, I didn't know that. Interesting. Well, there's another interview here, and so this one goes for about 5 minutes. It's a bit earlier, 1939, and so we'll get another perspective on Percy Granger's life and influences.
Hands Across the Sea is privileged to have as its special guest this afternoon Percy Granger, the eminent Australian-American pianist and composer. Australia has given many notable artists and made many notable contributions to American musical life, and Percy Granger is one of the outstanding contributions that we have inherited from Australia. It's a very great pleasure, Mr. Granger, to have you on this program, Hands Across the Sea on Anzac Day.
It is a great pleasure to be with you. I always enjoy hearing you conduct and being associated with you musically.
Well, thank you very much. I consider that a very lovely compliment, Mr. Granger. But I just want to turn back the pages of time, back to your early days. You were born in Melbourne, is that not so?
Yes, in 1882.
Yes. I know that your mother exerted a very profound influence on your decisions in your musical life. Could you tell us something about that?
Yes. Well, my mother had this rather unusual attitude, perhaps, for someone who came from a family that did not practice music. She cared for music as an emotional experience and not as a matter of technique or skill or anything to do with entertainment. She regarded it like she regarded poetry, as something part of her life of feeling.
Well, didn't that lead to your decision that the composition was to be perhaps one of your fortes in your musical creativeness?
Yes, people say, of course, that music is a form of self-expression.
Right.
But I don't see how that can be when you're playing somebody else's composition.
I see, that's
If
true.
so, what happens to his self-expression?
Well, you see, of course, today we have such wonderful things in recording that your magnificent piano playing, of course, will go down to posterity. But still, it's nothing like leaving one of your own creations behind, like your many compositions.
Yes, because a composition, of course, is a national expression, isn't it?
That's right. But I'm very happy, Mr. Granger, that you didn't neglect your pianist career, because you've had a most outstanding success in that. You know, I was very much interested in reading about you, then your relationships with Edvard Grieg. You were a great friend of Edvard Grieg. Is that not so?
Yes. My mother had been so fond of playing Grieg's music when I was a little boy, so I was very familiar with it.
Didn't you introduce his piano concerto for the first time?
No, I didn't do that. You see, he wrote the piano concerto when he was 24, and he was 64 when I met him.
Oh, I see.
So it had how long is that? It had been played for 40 years. No, the only thing that was new about it was my playing it.
I see. Well, it has certainly been associated with you a great many times. Your interpretation of it has always been...
Yes, because he chose me to play it at the Leeds Festival.
Yes. And that was unfortunate. He was going to conduct...
Yes, he was going to conduct two programs there.
Yes, and he died just about a month before then, didn't he?
Yes, just about. He died about the 10th of August.
But you played it anyway with...
Yes.
And I know with outstanding success. Did Grieg have any influence on your decisions? You've done a great deal with folk music in your compositions. Did Grieg have any influence on you in that respect?
Not personally, but his music did. I'd done many folk song settings before I met Grieg.
Yes.
In fact, most of my best-known ones were written before I met him.
That's right. That includes Molly on the Shore and Shepherd's Hay and the Irish tune from the County Derry. And
Yes.
some of those
Yes.
numbers of like Country Gardens that have become almost
Country Gardens was later. That was not till
standard
1988.
works in everybody's repertoire. Music is always full of the joie de vivre in Mr. Granger, but he's a great outdoor man. And I've read a great deal about him, and I know quite a good bit about him in his feeling for the great outdoors. I know he's a great walker. Is that not so, Mr. Granger?
Well, I like walking because I like to see the things that you can see when you walk.
That's right. We rush by in automobiles, and we miss all the intimate beauties of nature.
Yes.
It's true. I hear you once walked 65 miles to give a concert in Durban, South Africa.
Yes.
So?
I walked from Pietermaritzburg to
Yes.
Durban
Yeah,
because I wanted to see the Zulus and the Zulu country,
I see.
which are both very
And
interesting.
you also walked across the Australian desert.
The South Australian desert, yes. Very
Well,
beautiful part of the world.
I recall just a few weeks ago hearing you play the Tchaikovsky piano concerto with the West Point Military Academy Band. That was quite a thrill, and how
Yes,
beautifully...
it's a lovely band, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is.
And such a wonderful conductor.
Well, what are we going to hear of yours this afternoon?
Oh, this Marching Song of Democracy.
And
That,
who,
I feel, is the most typically Australian piece I've written.
Is that so? And who performs it?
That's for chorus, orchestra, and organ.
Recorded at the BBC?
That's the BBC, yes, conducted by Leslie Woodgate.
Well, thank you very much, Percy Granger, and let's listen to the Marching Song of Democracy, the composition of Percy Granger.
Well, there we go. That's here we go. Let's find it.
Who was the interviewer, do you know?
Does it tell us? Yes, I think it does. It's a conductor. Bear with me.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. I wondered if we...
Yeah, Neumann, I think. Let me... Hermit, no. Bear with me. I will just quickly get this queued up and then I'll go back and
sorry,
check.
I didn't need to
No,
send you
not at all. I'd be most interested to find out myself. Bear with me, because I just haven't got the page open now. Let's have a look. Does it tell us? Does it tell us here? Oh, that's... Yes. Yes, Hermann Neumann is the conductor and interviewer. It's not the Neumann I remember, not the Czech Neumann, but yeah, that's who it is.
Good. Well, obviously Percy had a good respect for him.
Yes, it seemed to be a nice sort of mutual camaraderie there. It's
like the Mr. Granger.
Yes, I do. It's very that wonderful era of sort of formal and respect, and
that's got a certain something going for it a bit.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
I'm not there's stick in the mud, but
no. It's just dignified.
The respect.
Yeah, it is. It's a respect, and
I hate people. I hate it when people ring you on the phone that you've never met and you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And they call you by your first name.
Yeah, I know.
I just rail.
Yes, I understand that. Yeah, they just sort of, it's just, it's
great intrusion.
It is an intrusion. I acknowledge that, absolutely.
Anyway, it's off the soapbox.
No, I understand. And yes, there's a certain dignity and respect there, and so I've got this piece, this marching democracy thing. Shall we have a listen to it? Since he gave us the blurb, I'm quite keen to hear it. It's never been on my radar. So for chorus and marching song of democracy, 1917 by Percy Granger. So let's have a listen. Says the chorus uses nonsense syllables. Oh, how about that? That last note, it didn't stop.
Democracy.
Yeah, democracy. And all nonsense words, all the way through. The whole thing's just nonsense words,
I was
pams
trying
and
to make
pars.
some
And,
sense of it.
yeah, there's no discernible lyrics. And he gives this explicit set of instructions about how to pronounce the nonsense words, all pars and tams and pams and D's and dars and tars, and it's all nonsense words.
Like a political speech.
Yes, I think it's possibly what he's evoking.
Yes.
It's crazy stuff. It's so well written. It's really well written, but sort of taking the piss a bit, it seems.
I think so.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Lovely stuff.
It's marvellous. Oh, I'm intrigued. Yeah. Look, there's something else I must play. It goes for about another. This will be our penultimate.
Not the Gumsuckers March.
Yeah, Gumsuckers March. I don't know that one. Is that a Granger piece?
Yes.
Oh, really? Is it? Oh, so I'll play it tomorrow afternoon.
Yes.
I'll play it tomorrow afternoon. Can you? I'll write it down. Gumsuckers March.
That's the one.
Okay. Oh, he's crazy. He's crazy. And that last note just didn't stop.
I know.
It's just marvellous. That was the MSO, by the way. The MSO and with Andrew Davis. And
They did well.
And the MSO chorus. Yeah, they did really well. Yeah, it was good. Yeah. All right, look, there's something else that's popped up since we last did our Granger specials, all manner of things, actually. But this one here is a little program about, I think it's about 7 minutes long, about his synthesizers.
Oh, yes.
And it's an AB. I think looks like it's a. Let me see. What's the background to this? It says the Australian classical composer Percy Granger heard strange music in his head. He built machines to produce it, and these were the precursors to the synthesizer. And it goes for about 9 minutes, and it's a short film, probably made in the 60s. So yeah, I think just after his death, perhaps. I'm not sure, but. Someone's written here. There's a few interesting comments. I've not heard this before. This has just popped up. There's a comment. There's mentioning the WTF moment when they actually hear the pieces at the end.
Yeah.
So
I love those WTF moments.
Yes, that's it. So look, let's have a listen to Percy Granger's synthesizers. Let's look at some of his free music.
The electronic synthesizer is a space-age music maker, but this music was composed in another era by an Australian musician, the late Percy Granger. In the horse and buggy days of early this century, Granger was composing works that wouldn't be heard until the 70s. He never heard them. Granger died in 1961, before the synthesizer was invented, but it was the machine he dreamed of. A machine that allowed the composer to speak directly to the audience, free of the limitations of the human hand. Granger called it free music. Granger is best known for such works as Country Gardens and Shepherd's Hay, but a little-known talent of this extraordinary Australian is reflected in his strange free music machines. The machines were sent to the Granger Museum at Melbourne University from his American home after he died. They remained unassembled until recently, when Mr. Burnett Cross of New York made a special visit to assemble them. Burnett Cross, a physicist and professional drummer, worked with Granger to make these machines between 1945 and 1961. A chance meeting in New York brought the two together. Cross wanted a job, and Granger wanted a musically inclined scientist, so a pact was made. Granger's methodical habits are seen in the detailed labelling of the parts of the experimental music machines that once cluttered his American home. In his efforts to produce free music, Granger devised machines that could be regarded as crude forerunners of the synthesizer. Granger was trying to create music that was not limited by time and pitch intervals. Burnett Cross describes an early model.
Percy called it a reed box tone tool. The main part of this machine is a reed box down in here, which is a kind of giant mouth organ. It has harmonium reeds mounted in it, just the way they're mounted in a mouth organ. Percy thought that if we had the reeds very close together, we might be able to get something that sounded like a glide. And that's what he was interested in, a gliding sound. From this machine, Percy learned that his idea of gliding chords that he had heard in his mind was in fact valid, musically worthwhile.
And this is how it sounds with Percy Grainger's identification.
First gliding chords on reed box tone tool, September the 30th, 1951.
This sound was originally recorded on acetate discs by Burnett Cross, who shows with his hand how the perforations relate to the sound made by the tone tool. Copies of the tape are in the Grainger Museum.
He was a marvelous man to work with. Part of the fun, of course, was this research thing that we were engaged on, because that's what it really was, research into free music, and that appealed to me. But another part of it was being with Percy, talking with him. It was enormous fun. We had conversations which were just a delight, just an intellectual feast. And then, of course, another part of the pleasure of working with him was that he played the piano so marvelously, and he frequently played the piano.
Burnett, exactly how does this machine make music?
This is an electronic oscillator, and it gives out a musical sound by way of a loudspeaker. When you move this arm like this, the pitch of the musical sound changes, something like this. Now, this little rider here can move the arm to change the pitch of the oscillator, and the little rider is lifted up and lowered by this paper graph passing through the machine. Percy cut the profile of the paper graph after he drew it with a pencil and a ruler, after he drew it according to measurements that I gave him of, say, something like 1/2 inch to the half tone or whatever. Now, that doesn't mean that Percy was thinking in half tones, of course. Those were just convenient points. He was thinking in intervalless sounds.
What was Grainger actually trying to achieve then with these machines?
He was trying to actually hear in the room the music that he had heard in his mind for many years, in fact, for almost his whole life. Now, you might wonder, why would he need machines to hear this music? Well, the kind of music that Percy was composing, his free music, was too difficult for people to play. People couldn't play it. And Percy saw, therefore, that the thing to do was to make machines that could play his music as he had composed it.
Did you, at the time, appreciate the fact that you were involved in something historic in the development of music?
Yes. I had a very definite feeling that what we were doing was something not only historic, but something important to the development of music. Because when Percy said things like free music being the only kind of music that was appropriate to a scientific age, that music ought to be able to move in curves freely through space, and not just by little steps or in little mosaic-like patterns. That seemed to me to make great sense. So I was convinced that what Percy was talking about and what we were doing was something really important besides being great fun.
Leading synthesizer companies in America declined to attempt programming Grainger's free music compositions. They all said the music was interesting, but too difficult, because Grainger composed it in graphs rather than conventional music notation. Les Craythorne, the programmer at the Melbourne University Conservatorium of Music, was the first to attempt programming a Granger free music composition on an electronic synthesizer. He took 14 hours over several days to produce the historic tape. The tape runs for 1 3/4 minutes and was played for the first time in public at this year's Percy Grainger Memorial Lecture in Melbourne.
Now we have something very special, so special that I hardly know how to introduce it to you. Something that Percy waited to hear all his life and never heard. The realization of his free music composition number 1.
And what did Mr. Cross think of it after all those years of waiting?
I'm overwhelmed. I thought, thinking about it before it happened, it would be something like a trip to the moon. But it isn't like a trip to the moon for me. The moon is a rather familiar object to me. This was like landing on a new planet, one that I've never heard of, completely unknown. The landscape is all different from anything I've ever seen before or walked on. I don't know what it means, but it's there, and it has to be explored somehow.
In 1938, Grainger wrote that he first heard free music in his head when, as a boy in Melbourne, he watched the sea at Brighton and Albert Park. He could never see why, in a scientific age, music shouldn't be as free and as infinitely variable as the waves.
Oh, I was hoping for some more. That's the program. So
Sudden, wasn't it?
yeah, it just suddenly stopped. But yeah, how about that? And there's quite a few people I recognise, or some names there.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if he had any overlap or knowledge of Stockhausen.
Yeah, I wonder. That's an interesting point, because Stockhausen was doing similar things in the early 50s.
In a broader sense, really.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I wonder. That would be something worth investigating, but quite a visionary and interesting.
Oh, it was great.
Ideas.
What Percy was doing was terrific.
Yeah.
Not denigrating that at all.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. So, remarkable stuff. So, we'll have a listen to more of his free music. That's number 1. I think there's at least 2 other cycles which we can feature in future programs. Yeah, so there you have it. We went down the Grainger rabbit hole. Now, I was just remembered this afternoon I was going to give you the handle for a birthday list. So look, let's maybe have a bit of a ponder tomorrow afternoon. Yeah, and just come up with anything that comes to mind, and we'll sort of give you the. You could just we'll dial them up.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so that'd be fun. I'd enjoy that. So yeah, tomorrow afternoon. Yeah, so I noticed that there's a work of his called Blythe Bells, a free ramble on Bach's Sheep May Safely Graze.
Nice.
So this might be a nice way to finish up. So
I think it would be.
yeah, so I think this is Grainger playing. Does it tell us here? It says the handful of transcriptions by Percy Grainger put him in straight into the Liszt Busoni Rachmaninoff class. Blythe Bells, dating from 1931, as one of the best. But those expecting the familiar strains of Sheep May Safely Graze from Bach's Cantata 208 had better be prepared for an extraordinary change of shape, colour and harmony, beginning with a notation that Bach may have aimed at giving a hint of the sound of sheep bells and also conveying his belief that the 3 greatest composers were Bach, Delius and Duke Ellington. There is nothing quite like this very sincere... Wow.
Delius number 2 is a bit of a surprise, the others not at all.
Yeah, fascinating. Wow. That's
a great piece of information.
Isn't it just extraordinary? I just would never, There we go. So, yeah, nice way to finish. We'll hear some of the Blythe Bells, Lucy Granger. And thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you as always.
Yeah, we'll catch up tomorrow, back on board. And thanks, Ian, for your presence earlier on.
Indeed, Ian. Good evening. And thanks.
Yeah. And thanks, listeners. Thank you for sharing the love and being on board with us as we've gone down. You always go down rabbit holes, and it's always fun. Yeah. All right, so here we go. Blythe Bells to wind up. Thank you.
vk3sl going to listening.
And vk3sl.
To the listener.
Yes.
Thank
indeed.
you for listening.
Absolutely. And we'll catch up tomorrow afternoon with Frank's playlist. Yay. Look forward to it, Frank. All right, catch you then. I'm vk3sl.